Salt, a simple yet powerful substance, has been a cornerstone of human civilization for centuries. From flavoring our food to preserving our history, salt's impact is undeniable. But there's more to salt than meets the eye. In the Bible, salt is more than just a seasoning. It's a symbol of power, protection, and purification. In ancient times, salt was a precious commodity, used to preserve food and heal wounds. Its value was so great that it was even used as currency in some cultures. But salt's significance extends far beyond its practical uses. In many cultures, salt is a symbol of hospitality, friendship, and loyalty. But what does the Bible really say about salt? Is it just a mundane substance, or is there something more to its story? The answers may shock you. From the sacrifices of the Old Testament to the teachings of Jesus in the New, salt plays a surprising role in the biblical narrative. It's a story of spiritual warfare, of protection and purification, of faith and trust in God. As we examine the biblical account of salt, we'll encounter surprising twists and turns. We'll see how salt was used to ward off evil, to purify the unclean, and to symbolize the covenant between God and his people. But be warned, the truth about salt in the Bible is not for the faint of heart. It's a story of spiritual battle, of good versus evil, of the very fabric of our reality. So, if you're ready to uncover the shocking truth about salt in the Bible, keep watching, but be prepared to have your mind blown. In the next section, we'll venture into the Old Testament, where salt's story begins. From the sacrifices of Leviticus to the dramatic events of Lot's wife, we'll uncover the surprising role of salt in the ancient world. In the ancient world, salt was a precious commodity, essential for preserving food and purifying the body. But in the Old Testament, salt plays a far more significant role, one that reveals its spiritual significance. Salt was added to every sacrifice, every offering, as a symbol of the covenant between God and his people. It represented the preservation of their relationship, the flavoring of their worship. But salt's role went beyond symbolism. It was also used to purify the offerings, to cleanse them of impurities. In Ezekiel, we read of the priests using salt to purify the sacrifices, to make them acceptable to God. Salt's purifying properties made it an essential tool in ancient Israel. It was used to cleanse the unclean, to purify the impure. In Numbers, we read of the ritual of purification, where salt was used to cleanse those who had come into contact with death. One of the most striking examples of salt's power is the story of Lot's wife. As they fled Sodom, she looked back and was turned into a pillar of salt, a haunting reminder of the dangers of looking back, of turning away from God. Another example is the story of Elisha, who used salt to heal the waters of Jericho, making them pure and clean. In these stories, we see salt's power to purify, to cleanse, and to preserve. But we also see its role in judgment, in punishing those who turn away from God. In the New Testament, salt takes on a new significance, as Jesus uses it to teach powerful spiritual truths. One of the most famous phrases in the Bible is, "You are the salt of the earth." But what did Jesus mean by this? When Jesus called his followers the salt of the earth, he was emphasizing their role as preservers of society, as flavorings of the world around them. Just as salt adds flavor to food, Jesus' followers were to add flavor to the world, making it a better place. But salt's significance goes beyond flavoring. Jesus also used salt to teach about spiritual growth. In Mark, we read of Jesus teaching that salt must be salted, or it will lose its flavor. This teaches us that our spiritual lives must be constantly nourished, or we will lose our effectiveness. Paul also used salt as a metaphor for wisdom. In Colossians, he writes that our speech should be seasoned with salt, meaning that our words should be wise and thoughtful. Salt's connection to spiritual growth is also seen in its purifying properties. Just as salt purifies food, Jesus' teachings purify our hearts, making us more like him. As we explore Jesus' teachings on salt, we begin to see a pattern. Salt is not just a seasoning, but a symbol of our spiritual lives. It represents our role as preservers, flavorings, and purifiers in the world around us. In the next section, we'll explore salt's role in spiritual warfare and its surprising connection to protection and purification. Salt's significance extends far beyond the physical realm, into the spiritual domain. In spiritual warfare, salt is a powerful weapon used to protect and purify. In the Bible, we see salt used to ward off evil spirits. In the book of Enoch, Salt is used to bind and cast out demons. This ancient practice is still used today, as many believers use salt to protect their homes and families from evil influences. But salt's power goes beyond exorcisms. It's also a symbol of faith and trust in God. In the Old Testament, salt was used to seal covenants, representing the preservation of relationships. In the same way, our faith in God is a preserving force, protecting us from the evil that seeks to destroy us. In spiritual warfare, salt represents the power of God's word, purifying and protecting us from the enemy's attacks. As we trust in God, we become like salt, preserving the world around us, flavoring it with God's love and grace. The early church fathers recognized salt's spiritual significance, using it to bless and consecrate. They understood that salt's purifying properties made it a powerful tool against evil. As we wield salt as a spiritual superweapon, we must remember that its power comes not from the salt itself, but from our faith and trust in God. Salt is simply a symbol of God's preserving power in our lives. Now that we've explored salt's spiritual significance, let's talk about practical ways to incorporate it into our spiritual practices. First, we can use salt in prayer. Sprinkle salt around your prayer space to create a protective boundary, warding off distractions and evil influences. As you pray, imagine the salt purifying your heart and mind, preparing you for a deeper connection with God. Next, we can use salt in meditation. Hold a small bag of salt or a salt crystal during meditation, focusing on its purifying properties. As you inhale, imagine fresh, salty air filling your lungs, cleansing your spirit. As you exhale, imagine any impurities or negative thoughts leaving your body. Salt can also be used in rituals, such as blessings, consecrations, and purifications. Sprinkle salt around a new home to bless and protect it. Use salt to consecrate a new spiritual practice or ritual, setting it apart as sacred. Remember, salt is a symbol of God's power and protection. As we use it in our spiritual practices, we're reminded of His presence and care. Here are a few more tips. Keep a small bag of salt near your bed to promote peaceful sleep and protection. Use salt in your bath water for a purifying and relaxing soak. Sprinkle salt on your doorstep to ward off negative energy and welcome positivity. By incorporating salt into our spiritual practices, we can deepen our connection with God and tap into its purifying power. In conclusion, our journey through the shocking truths about salt in the Bible has revealed a powerful symbol of God's presence and protection. From its use in sacrifices and offerings to its role in spiritual warfare and protection, salt's significance extends far beyond the physical realm. We've seen how salt represents the preserving power of God's word, the flavoring of our lives with His love and grace, and the purifying force of His presence. We've explored its use in exorcisms, blessings, and consecrations, and discovered practical ways to incorporate salt into our spiritual practices. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the shocking truths about salt in the Bible. May God bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you. As we close, remember that salt's power comes not from the substance itself, but from the God it represents. May the shocking truths about salt in the Bible inspire you to deepen your connection with Him, to trust in His protection and purification, and to wield salt as a spiritual superweapon in your own life. Apply the knowledge you've gained today to your spiritual journey. Use salt to flavor your prayers, purify your heart, and protect your path. As you do, may you experience the preserving power of God's love and grace, and may your life be seasoned with the flavor of His presence. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the shocking truths about salt in the Bible. May God bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you.